Today we'll talk about Russian protests. You know Russia, right? This big country started biggest war since World War II with dictator Putin in power and trying to do nasty stuff, and Russians are allegedly very against of it. It's all that guy. According to New York Times, BBC's and others, there are lots of Russian protests. So we tried to find them and research. It appeared very difficult because they were, not that big. I would say even smaller than we anticipated. We are often asked here at Ukrainian Toronto Television, why was a Large Hadron Collider built? Finally, there's an answer: to find the smallest element in the universe which cannot be detected without special equipment. The Russian protest. The spring movement held a small protest action. We placed toys, dolls, various animals with small posters on which the toys opposed the amendments to the Constitution. As Alexander Pushkin, Russian poet, said, the Russian revolt is senseless and senseless. The so-called Russian opposition has long become a meme and a synonym for misery. They fight the government only in a way the government allows them to, voluntarily brand themselves as foreign agents so the regime can fall maybe out of too much laughter. The Russian opposition is like a nonconformist teenager rebelling against his parents but asking his dad for money for a leather jacket. When in the early 2010s the opposition realized that fighting the dictatorship is hard and dangerous and risky, and they needed to do something as not to be reproached for inaction, they invented nano-protests. Nano-protest is a form of protest that has become widespread in Russia since 2012. Anonymous artists create very small figures of people and animals, give them signs of protest and place them in public spaces. The small size of the figure, its emphasized toy-likeness, emphasizes the impossibility of performing en masse and loudly. Toys protest because people no longer can. This is how one could formulate the message embedded in the nano protest. This piece of clay with the word "нет," no, in Russian, is supposed to defeat the Russian regime because it is micro-located and micro says the word of denial. And why exactly? No one cares. Perhaps it says no to Putin, perhaps no to Navalny, maybe it says no to the prohibition of incest. No one knows that. No one knows what this no means, right? So it's just no?
No.
Like no to war?
No! God, please, no! No! No!
Jesus, okay. However, the Russian opposition is proud of its invention and it has become popular among Russians who are supposedly dissatisfied with the government. Evidence of this is the Instagram Tiny PK, similar to a kindergarten group WhatsApp chat, which already has over thousands of toys. Yeah, this is a protest which declares nothing. And there are dozens, hundreds of such micro-protests in Russia about nothing. Together, they are forming this huge, earth-shifting, massive nothing. Very soon there are going to appear clay policemen and Lego paddy wagons which will lock the micro-protesters in a shoebox under the bed, and Luke Skywalker will appear fighting Lego Darth Vader, and Lego Ewoks will finally do what Navalny didn't manage to. About Star Wars, by the way, it's not even a joke. Here's a Lego Stormtrooper literally protesting somewhere in Russia, probably poor military equipment, those bad lasers, laser guns. Not a great accuracy. Yes, in Russia, even Lego figures are unable to express themselves clearly, and not all of them have the courage to at least call a war a war. A Lego worker figure holding a micro poster with 8 stars. 3 stars mean no, 5 stars mean war in Russian. We can only assume because there's nothing there, it's just asterisks and dots and cryptic messages to someone, but those protesters always send in mixed signals, like when Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream." Guess what it was? In any case, what does this revolutionary bold phrase "no to war" even mean? To whom it is addressed? Who is to blame for the war? If Ukraine surrenders, Russia occupies our entire territory and kills several more million people as it happened in 1930s, will the Russian micro-protesters be happy? Well, there's no war. there's just genocide, am I right? The parts of Russian opposition who didn't manage to buy clay and don't have money for Legos are less fortunate. They are forced to come up with actions of their own and show considerable ingenuity to invent a message that almost no one will understand. Enough of wobbler. Enough. If you know what I mean. I don't understand. I had to read several times to get this nonsense. It turns out that no to wobbler, and wobbler is a poor Russian fish, is a local meme of the Russian opposition. It was formed after one of the activists stated that this is what she meant by the phrase with the asterisks. Jesus fucking Christ. Russians thought that making fun of a topic related to the genocide of another nation was cool and sharp and smart, and that they turned this poor fish into one of their main supposed kind of, probably we are not sure, anti-war expressions. Let's say together, sisters and brothers. No to wobbler. No to wobbler. Russians were so captivated by this smart idea that they created a website with the same name to proudly display examples of their struggle to a Western audience. This site is just a database of cringe, and to study it, Alan Turing wouldn't be out of place because most of this encrypted opposition messages are fucking enigma. For real, a sticker saying "why" in a supermarket against a background of chicken eggs. Why? Why what? Why buy eggs? Why protest if you cannot just, like, I don't know, if you can kill yourself? Someday Russians will reach the point of audacious protest without any words, just thinking of a protest thought in their heads, then immediately calling the police and asking to be put in jail. Here's, for example, a microscopic sticker "leave" on some unknown post addressing unclearly to whom, or the inscription "read remark" on the wall. Well, that's deep. Makes you think. Of what? Peace is gone. It was beautiful, kind, joyful, loved all people, helped bring back peace. You ask me, Mark, why are you so mad? They're like trying to do something. They're trying to do what they can. But here's the thing, if we delve into this toothless nonsense, it turns out that according to Russian opposition, there was peace before full-scale invasion in 2022, and Russians did not invade the territory of others, did not occupy Crimea, Donbas, did not fight in Syria, did not occupy Georgia, and did not start the Chechen wars. They just lived peacefully, and then for some reason, the shelling of Belgorod region began, and there was a strong desire for peace. That is, even when conducting anonymous protests, where the risks of being detained is minimal, Russians still fear to acknowledge their guilt, talk about the problems, and call for their resolution. In the end, this type of protest is at best meaningless, and in other cases it can be interpreted in a completely different way. For example, the inscription "I am scared too." Maybe it's about the fear of being mobilized and going to fight in Ukraine. Maybe the person is afraid of Ukrainian Nazis, or perhaps he's just he's just like a chicken. He's afraid of everything. He's not cool as we are, me and you, right? Or they call "Don't Shoot," which is directed at someone unknown. Perhaps it's hunters, or most probably it's Ridley Scott. If you're a Russian and you're tired of NATO protesting, tired of NATO Russians, you can protest on a larger scale, but still just as unclearly. Standing with a random inscription on a piece of paper which, judging by its appearance, this Russian swallows immediately as soon as a passerby appears within 500 meters. Or piercing unknown leaflets with arrows on which it's not even visible what is written. Maybe it's a protest against the lack of targets for archery. All this is done so that the authorities do not decide that the Russian protest is a protest, because it really isn't. It's just an action for the sake of an action. But the futility here lies in something else. Russians are still detained for actions that are designed so they wouldn't be detained. I started my peaceful anti-military action
Антивоенная.
Radisha, Cherkasy region. I stood with the poster, unfolded the inscription "For a peaceful sky over Sofia" on the ground, and at the time I began to list the cities of Ukraine. I was detained somewhere near the letter K. I didn't have time to name Kiev. So then why don't you speak about everything as it is, if the result is ultimately the same? This is a task with an asterisk, which Russians cannot decipher, because they would rather stand near that asterisk, reflecting on which protesting letter is hidden behind it. The Russian opposition is convinced that the regime can only be defeated by not talking about it, so they organize an Olympics among themselves of hints, allegories, and interpretations. During the late USSR, the ballet Swan Lake was part of mourning events after the death of political leaders. Thus, graffiti with headless figures of ballerinas performing the dance of little swans symbolizes the expectation of Putin's death, and writing text is completely unnecessary. Why are you screaming, you might ask me? Mark from Ukrainian Tehran Television, by the way, subscribe and like this video. Well, you see, you might say that this nonsense is unnecessary and that it's just a movement within a small Russian opposition bubble. However, that's not the case. These nano protests, as always, are taken seriously in the West, where utopian search for good Russians continues. Western media uses actions to talk about the existence of a protest in Russia and resistance to the regime. For this purpose, for example, the New York Times released a large editorial piece to decipher the action and find some sense in them, which is obviously non-existent. Decoding the anti-war messages of miniature protesters in Russia. That is, 140 million Russians still cannot decode reality when their country moves its huge army into the territory of a neighboring state after a 30-minute history lecture by a delusional retired KGB agent. This is very complicated and impossible to decode because decoder does not work. But if some Russian makes a tattoo inside their anus with 8 stars, then enlightenment will come and Russia will rise against military aggression. Similar materials with enthusiasm about nano protests were made by BBC, Reuters, Guardian, Nation, and others. Almost every major Western publication considers it's their duty to tell about how Russians with a Hanover tremor mold crooked figures to declare they're important nothing. Because, as you can see in the West, the search for good Russians has now been supplemented by the search for Russian resistance, which is reaching the point of absurdity. Our European and American advocates for peace around the world will soon begin, along with Russians, to search for an oppositional message in the letter Z and call against the war in the harmonies of melodies from the shots of Russian Kalashnikov rifles. Clever anti-Putin graffiti appears in Russian cities as new resistance campaign emerges. Russian citizens are urged to spray the word Russia in a specific font, and in the process indicating it's an anti-Putin message. Yes, you just saw a protest graffiti. It was the word Russia written in a protest font. Putin is already in agony, you know. Compared to this, your school doodles in margins of your math notebook would make you the new Nelson Mandela of Russian protest. Just look at this braid. You didn't even know that you were drawing a noose for Putin's neck and making him die at rate of 1 day per day. So yeah, that's it. That's Russian protest. That's what we got. That's what we found. It was hard. It was hard, but we did it. And thank you for watching, and subscribe to our channel. Like our video, we need it. We desperately need your likes and comments and likes. And don't leave your, like, you know, nano comments or whatever. Leave normal comments.